you've said that your mom, who's an artist that homeschooled you and your sister, taught you to create something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice, insight, like best practices or things that you're like, oh my gosh, here's what happens. I don't even know, Morgan. Like, do you ever hit a wall where you're like, I don't know what to say? Any insight that you can share, I think people would get a lot of value.
Oh yeah, for sure. I have two. I have one for the kind of writing side and then more for the visual side too. I get a lot of people who are very curious about my art practice because I make all of my own graphics and I am not trained in art. Like I just learned my iPad but what I try to encourage people to do, I'm like, if you're intimidated by the iPad and you're just like, I want to start with like, old school materials, don't get fancy. Get some kids' crayons, some markers, get some printer paper. If you're just wanting to get in the habit and you haven't colored in years, get like an actual kids coloring book. Because if you go to the craft store and you buy $100 worth of art supplies, you're going to be like, I don't want to use them because they're so pretty and so perfect and I don't want to mess them up. So I keep plenty of crayons around my house. I use them way more than my son does. And I'll just scribble. Like it's fun to just play with them. So that's what I would say. That part is so important because it's so easy to get really fancy and feel like you need every brush, every tool. But it can be so simple. And on the writing side, one of my practices that I have, and I've had it since 2017, and it's still a practice for me today, is to figure out who the person is or the people are that you can talk to on a one-to-one basis, because those people are going to bring the words out of you because that's what happens organically in conversation. So I think a lot of times it's easy to get stuck as a writer because when you're sitting there at the page, it does not feel like a conversation. That energy that we have when we're talking to people that we care about, there's a way to bring that into what we do in some ways.
So it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't like, writer's block is not a thing that exists in your process because it's such a practice that's rooted in real conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm really serious about the writer's block thing because I do have moments where I sit there and I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know what to say to this person. Yeah. And that to me, I'm like, well, that's the cue that it's time to read. It's time to listen. So it's not, for me, it's not a block. That's just a cue to do something else. So it's just a cue to go and read and take in. And then when you're filled up, then you can go and speak again. So yeah, that's kind of how I see
love
it.
that. It's not a block. It's a cue that you need to shift your attention and energy.